science is still not super clear on what the best approach to trails and mountain running is. There are so many examples of people who ran fast doing a road running season in the winter and then a trail running season in the summer. And there are so many other good examples of, ski mountaineering or other winter sports in the winter time and great trail running season in the summer. This approach, for example, is the one that Kylian Jornet or Davide Magnini have.
Hi guys, it's Florian there, and you are listening to podcast Świat okiem biegacza. Today another episode in English. My guest is Francesco Puppi, a mountain runner from Italy. Francesco, I'm so happy that we can speak, and it's so nice to meet you. It's a pleasure to have you on my show. If you can introduce yourself, who are you, and what are you doing daily?
Yeah, thank you for having on your show. It's a privilege, and sorry for those of you who don't speak much English. Anyway, my name is Francesco Puppi. I'm 30 years old. I just turned 30. I'm from Italy. I live near the Alps. Actually, not exactly in the mountains, but very close. So the mountains have always been my playground since I was a child. My parents used to take me hiking and mountaineering all the time when I was young. But my passion for mountain running didn't start as soon as I started running, because I was actually born on the track and on the roads and on cross country, probably like most kids do. So when I was like 6-7 years old, I started running track, cross country races and stuff in the local club of my village. And then later on in my 20s, I developed the passion for trail and mountain running, because it was pretty natural for me to try first uphill races, which are very popular here in Italy where I live. There is a very strong tradition of mountain running with, for example, Marco De Gasperi, the De Matteis twins, all the mountain running Italian team that was and still is very strong. So I was very inspired by them. And then another episode that I remember really well, it was probably in 2006 or 2007, and I was hiking in the Dolomites, and it was just by random chance I came across the Dolomites Sky Race, and I saw Kylian Jornet for the first time. He was leading the race, and I saw these crazy runners going up and down from Canazei to Pitzboe and back. And I thought, oh, that's really cool. What are they doing? So I started, learning about them and discovering what sky running, trail running, mountain running, however you want to call it, is. And a few years later, I started, and I've never stopped since then. My running career is always a tight balance between what I do on the trails and also on the roads, because I still like to do some road running, especially in the wintertime. I still like cross country. I enjoy it a lot. I have goals both on the roads and on the trails. And I think this makes me, not like the average trail runner who is maybe only focused on the trails, who maybe does ski mountaineering in the winter, which is quite popular here in Italy. I like, all disciplines of athletics, track and field, road running, cross country, and trail and mountain running, of course. So I try to be my best on every surface. And this is probably one of my strengths. Besides running, I graduated in physics at university in 2017. So I studied physics. I'm very interested in scientific subjects. And actually, after graduating, I was a teacher in high school for a couple of years. But then when the pandemic came, I probably lost passion for it. I find it very hard with having to turn on the computer and doing online lessons and everything. It was really hard to deal with the kids and to pass the knowledge, the passion, and everything that we usually do at school, and that requires, a human touch, a contact. So I decided to stop, and I decided to actually devote all my time and energy in running. And luckily, my sponsor, Nike, came in to help because they offered me a professional trail running contract. And so I started basically running full time. Basically I've been a trail runner since 2021, a professional trail runner. And apart from that, I've had a few collaborations. The main one that I have is with the company, the startup that is Vert Run. It's a very popular training app for trail and mountain runners. And we build training programs. We offer content, free plans. We offer coaching, and just a lot of things that we have the aim to, encourage runners to go on the trails. For example, runners who come from road running or who are just getting started, they can find resources and information and a really nice community to get started on the trails. So this is basically what I do besides training, and that's me.
Yeah, you have talked so much, and you have talked about so many topics that, I know that I do not have to look on the list of questions that I wanted to ask you, because the main stuff you have talked is enough for me. So, first of all, I have to ask you, what about your age? Because it's often says that, okay, when you turn 30, the life has changed. So what about you? Do you see some difference between 29 and 30?
Actually, I don't think about it too much. I don't think age matters. I actually look a lot younger than my age, what my age says, and people take me for a 20 or a teenager, even a teenager by mistake all the time. I look pretty young. I didn't notice much of a difference between my 29 and 30.
I think it was quite funny when you talk about that you were a teacher. That I think that sometimes they can treat you as a not a teacher but a student. It's also funny because I am also a teacher. I teach math, but I graduated Warsaw University of Technology about engineering, and I teach math. I changed my type of studies, but it's not school podcast. It's rather about running. So first of all, it's hard to see the mountain runner sponsored by Nike. So are you first runner from Nike that run very fast in the mountains, or there are some others, but I just don't know them?
Yeah, that's a great question. So actually, Nike Trail Team started in the United States, and there was a trail running team a few years ago. For example, with Zach Miller, David Laney, and there still is a few people on the team, but I think the project stopped for a few years, and they didn't want to develop the trail running team anymore. Probably also because Nike wasn't making the shoes and the apparel. But then the interest in trail running came back. Probably also thanks to the pandemic. A lot of people wanted to get out on the trails to discover, trail running, the nature and stuff. Regarding me, I was the first one that I know of in Europe, together with my friend Cesare Maestri, who is also from Italy. He's a very good friend of mine. So we had the first contact with Nike at the end of 2019, just before the pandemic came, and we were offered basically a 1-year contract. It was kind of a trial with Nike, but then the pandemic came, so everything kind of stopped the first year, and we were running for Nike, but we weren't fully supported. But then 1 year later, it was last year, Fortunately, things took the right direction for us, and I was offered a professional trail running contract by Nike, together again with my friend Cesare Maestri. And now it seems that Nike is pushing and has an interest in developing trail running even more, because another very good runner from Europe, Nienke Brinkman, just signed for Nike. She's probably the rising star of 2021. She really had some amazing performances both on the roads and on the trails. And she also signed for Nike at the beginning of this year. For now, it's the three of us in Europe. There are a few runners in the United States, for example, Rachel Drake, and another guy, Preston Cates. He just signed for Nike in the United States. So I don't know what exactly their plans are, but I think Nike wants to develop a trail team. They're investing more in trail running, and I think it's cool when such a big company that is, the number one sport company in the world wants to invest in this sport. It means that there is an interest, there is a potential, and I feel very lucky to be part of this project.
Okay, when I think about teams, especially in Golden Trail Series, I mean about Salomon. Yeah, it's the main, but I think that maybe the companies like Nike, like Adidas, will also introduce their teams, and I think it's only good for everyone. So yeah, it's very important. You have also told me that you start from track, why you didn't, go further, and why did you give up the track to mountain running? What has happened that you said, okay, it's enough, and you change your sport, I can say?
It's not exactly that I gave up track and field, because I still run on the track. Last year, actually, I didn't do any race, but usually I do a couple of races every year. Last one was in 2020. It was 10,000 meters. I ran in 29:52, which was quite good for me. It's, as I said, it's good to maintain a balance between the speed that the track can give you and the strength and the technical skills that are required on the trails. So for me, this balance is fundamental in my training. I found that it really works for me, and I still have an interest in chasing my goals in track and field. But of course, I found that trail and mountain running is, my best event. It's where I managed to achieve my best results, from World Championship to Classic and Golden Trail Series races. There is actually a lot to do in trail running, so many experiences, so many races. We tend to see trail running as one sport, but it's actually many events inside one sport. So it's a big bucket of races and experiences. And I also have an interest in road running, because last year, for example, my spring was focused on marathon training, and I actually ran a marathon on the road. So again, for me, this approach is what works and what I'm interested in. Who knows, maybe in the future I will focus more on just trail running, or I would also like to dedicate a couple of years just to marathon training to see how far I can get, maybe even get close to an Olympic standard, which would be, a dream. But who knows? For now, I'm just interested in discovering my potential. So I'll do whatever it takes to run as fast as I can.
I think it's worth noticing what results have you run, because when I think about mountain running, I don't think like this kind of speed are usually, because your 2:16 on marathon, it's really, really great time. Another one is 1 hour and 4 minutes in half marathon. Also, you broke 30 minutes on 10K. So what result are you the most proud of?
Yeah, so I think on the road, the result I'm most proud of is the marathon. It was not easy. It was not an easy day when I ran 2:16. It was actually last year in the middle of the pandemic. We ran around an airport. It was a pretty bad day with the rain, with the wind. So, the conditions weren't the best, but I still managed a good time. And I think we need to put that into perspective because I'm not fully focused on the roads. And for a trail runner, running 2:16 in the marathon is pretty good. There are not very many guys who can do that.
Do you know someone who ran faster than you in marathon?
So Jim Walmsley, he ran 2:15 in the marathon trials, which was a great performance. There is also another American guy, Patrick Smythe, was a really good mountain runner. He also ran under 2:15, I think. Robbie Simpson, of course, from Europe, from United Kingdom. He was also a 2:15 marathon runner. He also actually probably below 2:15, 2:14 something. He went to the Commonwealth Games, so very strong on the roads, and he's been on the podium of Cerzinal multiple times, for example. So yeah, there are examples, and the fact that I'm with these names, makes me proud, and I think is really good for me.
When I see how the guys from mountain running are training, I see that these two types of weights, like first is as like you, so in the winter, in spring, they run just flat marathons, half marathons, something like that, and then they focus on mountains. Or another way is like they go for some winter activities and then they do the same in the summer. So do you see some differences, and can you say which way is better, or we can't say something about that?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question. Science is still not super clear on what the best approach to trails and mountain running is. There are so many examples of people who ran fast doing a road running season in the winter and then a trail running season in the summer. And there are so many other good examples of, ski mountaineering or other winter sports in the winter time, and great trail running season in the summer. This approach, for example, is the one that Kylian Jornet or Davide Magnini have. They're really good ski mountaineers. For example, look at the 2019 or even the 2020 season of Jim Walmsley. He ran super fast on the roads in the winter and then super fast in the summer on the trails, even very long events like 100-milers, also shorter races. So I think everyone should find the approach that works the best for himself or herself. And the fact that I think it's important to do a good volume and a good intensity. And the main difference that I find between people who do running all year round, like me, and people who do some kind of cross-training or winter sports in the winter time, it's easier for people who do, for example, ski mountaineering to do a really, really good volume combined with strength work because they do a lot of elevation. So I think this helped them in the summer to have a really high average level, but maybe not, huge peaks of performance. While, for example, runners who train on, running 365 days a year, they have a lower level probably on average, but they're able to maybe finalize or focus on one big goal and maybe achieve an even better performance on that. But on average, maybe on some races, they will miss out a little bit because, running is tricky. It's not enough to do miles, a huge volume, a huge intensity. It will burn you. While, for example, with other activities and the fact that people combine different sports like skiing, like cycling and other things, it really helps to build a very good base of volume and strength, which is probably the most important thing for the trails. So this is my opinion. It's probably not still scientifically proven, but I think many examples suggest this type of approach. So I can say my approach is a bit more dangerous, but sometimes can bring better results, which, if I look back in my running career, that is true to some extent.
I remember when I spoke several times with Bart Przedwojewski, coach, with Andrzej Orłowski, and also it's really nice to talk with him because he's a guy with so much knowledge, but he often says that, there are not so many proofs, there are not so many scientific proven results that, okay, in mountain running it works and it doesn't, but rather we have to check it on ourselves. We have to check what is good for us, what is good for some other runner. So it's very hard, to say that this way is okay, but another is wrong. And when did you discover that this way is good for you, or maybe are you still learning how your body responds to the training?
Yeah, I guess I'm always learning. It's a mix of different reasons. Part of it is that I enjoy doing what I do, so that is important, because if you don't enjoy it, you're not gonna perform. You're not gonna, do well. And part of it is because for me, it's easier to train. For example, running on the roads, on cross country, and on the track in the winter time, because I have access to the mountains, but for example, to do ski mountaineering, I would have to travel every day. I cannot start from my door, so it's also a matter of how easy it is to train every day. I think training needs to be sustainable for everyone. So it's important to consider the possibilities that you have, the options, and how easy it is for you to get out of the door, and how long it takes for you to actually start the workout. So running is the easiest for me, and is also the activity that I enjoy the most. I've found that when I do a little more cross training in the wintertime, it's easier for me to perform well in the summer, because often the seasons when I perform the best since the beginning of the summer, which is usually a time where I kind of struggle. For example, June and July, the first trail running races are not always my best. I tend to do better in the second part of the summer, so August, September, October. I found that when I'm injured in the wintertime, that I do a lot of cycling, a lot of other cross-training activities, I actually perform a little better probably in the summer. So as I said, it's always a matter of mixing the right type of training, stimuli, and at the same time not burn yourself, because it's really easy when you're training for a marathon, for example, to overtrain, to burn yourself. Recovery is always tricky after such hard workouts and big mileage. So you gotta be careful, and there is so many approaches that can work.
And what about bike? Because you have mentioned several times about cycling. I know some guys who introduce it into the training. And what about you? Because I saw on your Strava that you like cycling. So why is it important part of your training?
Yeah, it's important. I also enjoyed it a lot. The place where I live is very popular. There are a lot of cyclists, pro cyclists also, who like to ride on Como Lake. So it's part of my sport background. I mainly use the bike for cross training and recovery when I'm running full time. So maybe 1 or 2 times per week, an easy cycling session. I use it a lot. And when I'm injured, of course, the bike is my best friend. So I jump on the bike on the trainers and I try to do as much as I can. I try to simulate what I would do with running. So maybe during a week I would do 1 or 2 intensity sessions, one long ride for endurance, and the rest can be just easy. The problem is that this year I was I got injured last year at the end of the season. I started training with the bike, but then I had an accident and I broke an elbow, so I had to stop cycling. And right now, only indoor cycling is possible because I'm still recovering. So, at the same time, you got to be careful. I've also used the bike for specific strength work, for example, with short climbs and really, hard gear to produce power in the legs. And that is a very good strength work, I think, that can replace gym or some other type of strength training that can be, heels or whatever. As always, my coach helps me plan the right mix of training and cross training and everything to hopefully prepare me for the races at my best.
So, since your injury, since your elbow was broken, have you become the fan of Zwift, or you don't use this app?
No, I actually don't use Zwift. When I'm on the rollers, I just like listening to podcasts. While if I do a workout, I turn on the music and just focus on the effort. But when I'm just riding easy, I listen to podcasts, and it's actually nice because when I'm just running, I don't consume a lot of podcasts. But right now with the bike trainers, I listen to a lot of things, and it's super interesting. So I really suggest that.
Yeah, last year I have become really big fan of Zwift, and really I love this app. But thankfully, I moved to Malaga last September, so I do not have to use this app anymore. But I think, like, when I come to Poland, I definitely will go back to this. Another thing that I wanted to ask is if you can say something more about your cooperation with your coach. Are you working with him since childhood, or how long do you train with him?
So I've been collaborating with my coach since 2014. So it's been almost 8 years now. Basically my early athletic career was a bit unusual. I wasn't one of the best guys in my early years. I didn't win probably any race when I was, 12, 14 years old. But I had a very strong passion for running. And I had a coach who taught me the importance of self-improvement, of loving the fact that if you are consistent with training, you improve, you see the results. And even if those results don't matter, at a global level, because after all, it's all about ourselves. It's still nice to be able to chase our limits and discover what our potential is. So this is the first thing that I was taught at a very young age, and I think it's what kept me the passion. It's what kept the dream alive, which is really important for me. And then I spent a year in the United States when I was in high school, and there I almost stopped running because I was always basically injured. I also stopped collaborating with my old coach. But then when I came back to Italy, I wanted to restart running again. For a while, I was self-coached. I used to join some of my friends all the time to train with them, to try to understand what they were doing. It's always a nice thing to share your training with other people. They push you, they lead to improvement. So this was very important for me. And then after a while, I started, getting better and better and investing more and more time in running. So I decided that I, should get a coach. And I had a friend who was and who is still my coach. So I asked him if he wanted to be my coach in 2014. I was in Sestriere, which is a very popular altitude training location in Italy at the 2,000 meters. And he was there for training because he used to be a marathon runner. So I asked him if he wanted to coach me. And since then we started collaborating. And, it's thanks to him that I have become the athlete that I am. It's thanks to him that I've had a lot of opportunities, because he was a quite good runner himself, but he studied a lot. He knew a lot about athletics and running in general, because in order to discover running in all its forms, you have to have a lot of knowledge and contacts and possibilities. For just an example, he knew that he was in touch with the athlete manager of the New York City Marathon. So in 2017, I had the chance to make my marathon debut in New York, and that was only thanks to my coach, who had this contact, for example. So the organizers of the New York City Marathon were happy to have me on the start line, and I was towing the line with the elite runners in 2017 for my first marathon. I was still not very expert. I ran 2:25, but it was an unforgettable experience for me.
Yeah, I have spoken with Thijs Nijthuis, the runner from Denmark, and he told me that New York City Marathon is definitely the best run he have ever participated in. So I imagine that your memories about this race are only positive. And can you tell us a bit more about your studies in US? Because I know so many guys from Poland. Thijs also was studying there. And how are your memories about that time, about the period in US?
Great question. It was a really nice experience. I was 17 years old, so I was still in high school. It was part of an exchange program, so I was an exchange student, and I was hosted by an American family in Indiana, near Indianapolis. And I spent there one whole year in high school. I was a junior, and it was an unforgettable experience, which changed my personality really a lot. Thanks to the people that I met, the opportunities, the culture that I came across. It was very important. It wasn't that much focused on sports or running, because, as I said, I wasn't running that much at that time. I still had interest, of course, but I was picking up a lot of injuries, and also I was starting to have some troubles, physically speaking, here in Italy before I left for the United States. So it really was a chance to reset and find a new environment where I could, start from zero and make new friends, meet new people. So when I came back, I was a whole different person. Yeah, it was a life-changing opportunities that I encourage anyone that is still in high school to do, because it was so important for me.
Have you plans for studying in US? Because there are so many guys from Poland who are going to the internship in United States. And did you have a proposal to study there?
Actually, not at university. Of course, I didn't win a scholarship for running because I wasn't strong enough. I was still, a very average runner. I could have probably won a scholarship later on after a few years, but actually my university here in Italy was really good. I was happy with the balance that I found here, so I didn't. I wasn't looking for an opportunity to go to university, to college in the United States. Of course, I'm still really interested in what happens in the United States, especially in sports, track and field, college sport, and trail running, because the sport culture over there is really amazing. But I have been back in the United States for some periods of time, just not to study or to work.
Okay, so maybe now we will move on to the things that are happening right now, about what has happened last year. Because did you see last season as your biggest improvement and your the winning El Hierro, your biggest success? Because I knew the golden series from maybe half year, maybe a year, but I discovered it very interesting. So I think, like, for you, for a mountain runner, winning El Hierro was something, the dream comes true. So can you tell us something more about it, and explaining what is Golden Trail and what happened on El Hierro?
So El Hierro was the Golden Trail Series final for 2021, and the Golden Trail Series is a trail running circuit, an international circuit that is organized by Salomon, and it's usually made up by 6 races, which can change every year. There are a few that are always part of the series, which are last year were, and this year are going to be Zagama, Mont Blanc Marathon, and Cerzinal, and then a few other races that change. And each year the final is in a different place and gathers the best runners of the, let's say, the sub-ultra distance, so usually shorter than the marathon distance. And last year the final was in El Hierro, really technical and hard race with a lot of elevation, and also it was held in really hot conditions. So I wasn't really sure what was going to happen before El Hierro. I knew I was in good shape, but the course looked so challenging, and I usually like it when it's runnable and it's faster, so it didn't look as if it was a very good course for me. But apparently I was in really good shape, so we started the race, and I was leading with Stian Angermund and Remy Bonnet on the first climb. And then we remained together. For a while, I lost a bit of ground in the downhill, but then I managed to catch up. And then basically the race was very, very much conditioned by the heat, because it was really terrible. In the second part of the race, everyone started to slow down due to the heat. Some people also had to stop or ended up in the hospital because they were dehydrated, and it was really awful. The conditions were terrible. And somehow I was the one who survived the best, so I managed to win the race. And I was proud. I mean, it was a great achievement because of the popularity of the media that followed the race. It's one of the most well-known trail running circuits in the world, so definitely it was a very important win of my career. But I didn't feel like it was the best performance, mostly because of the conditions, because they didn't allow us to actually run fast. If you go on my Instagram accounts, you can see a few videos of the race, and you actually see how challenging it is, how terrible it was after, maybe 3 hours of racing. We were really running in terrible conditions, and it was basically all about surviving. So yeah, I really enjoyed the experience. The Golden Trail Series is a great project because they're trying to take trail running to a new level and really develop a truly professional sport. So I support the project very much. But there are also some things that we have to consider, because I don't think it was good for the athletes to race in such conditions. There should be more respect to the athletes, and it's not just the spectacularization of the sport. It's not just racing for the photos or the videos. We have to respect what we're doing, and there should be more guarantees for the athletes, I think. So it was definitely a memorable experience from a lot of perspectives, and of course it was a big win. I gained quite a bit of popularity, I think, after that race. But I think the performance that I consider my best on the trails was the 2019 World Mountain Running Championship in Patagonia, where I was second, and I lost to Jim Walmsley, who won that race. And after more than 3 hours of racing, I was less than 1 minute behind him. So it was a really close battle, and a really close race that I keep in my heart, because I was in such a great shape. It was such a great day to compete side to side with Jim. He's such a great champion.
I think that we can say that Golden Trail World Series is like Champions League for mountain runners, yeah, because I always spoke with Bart about that for him Golden Trail is more important than World Championship. And do you see it similar, that the level of Golden Trail is often higher than on World Championship?
So it's a good question. I think in some races the level of Golden Trail Series races can be considered higher than the level of World Championship, or at least comparable. The thing is that institutions and federation don't really have a lot of control on the sport, and from my point of view, this has been one of the biggest problems of trail running, because right now the federations are not able to organize a World Championship that really gathers the best trail runner of the world and put them together to race. And the Golden Trail Series is not trying to replace a World Championship, I think, but it has probably been the best advertised and the most well-known circuit in the world. It's where companies want their athletes to compete because there is visibility, there are opportunities. If you win a Golden Trail Series races, you can get quite famous, and sponsors, after all, they want visibility. While, for example, if you win a World Mountain Running Championship, it's a huge achievement. The level is still really high. It's a great event. I really do think so. But in terms of visibility, and even in terms of support that runners receive from their national team, that is not always good. There is still a lot of work to do. So I partly agree with what Bart says. I think there should be more collaboration between institutions and sponsors and private organizations, because after all, top runners, elite runners, they just want to compete. They just want to have the best opportunities to race and to display their fitness. So if we divide the sport, if we create too many circuits, the level will be diluted and everyone will lose. While if, for example, and maybe this is not something that is going to happen in the future, but if the International Trail Running Association or World Mountain Running Association collaborates with Salomon to create a circuit that can be called Golden Trail Series, can be called Mountain Running World Cup, whatever, it's probably better for everyone. And I think this is one of the main problems that we have in the sport. So yeah, there would be so many discussions and things to say about this topic, but definitely Bart made a good point, and as I say, I partially agree with it.
Yeah, because I also come from track and field, and I started there, and it is also often said by runners that running in mountains are hard to measure, and especially there are so many competitions, so many places where you can start, and it's hard to say who is the best. And in track, okay, there are world championship. In marathon, in half marathon, okay, we know who is the best. But in mountain running, even the time is not so easy to measure, because this year the route is quite easy, but another year, maybe the temperature is very high and sun is just shining, and it's hard to compare these two results. And do you see the same problem, that mountain running is hard to measure and hard, to say if this race was fast or, the level was quite weak?
Yeah, this is definitely another good point. So there are races where they have a very, long tradition, such as, for example, Sierre. It's maybe a race that has been held for 40, 50 years. So there is a performance record that is important and that everyone can compare with. So that if you go to Sierre and you run 2:32, for example, that's actually a huge performance. If you go there and you run 2:45, it's good, but quite average, I guess, for a male mountain runner. So there are a few events that are always the same and where performances are comparable. But in all other events, which are the majority, it's hard to compare. And mountain running is mostly an event where the athletes compete against each other, and the time don't matter very much. So in the end, it's just the final ranking that matters. And this is why it's important that the most famous and important races attract and have in their fields the best runner, because then anyone can be a champion of something. Anyone can win a big race. Anyone can win a race that some media, some sponsors, some organizations say it's important. There is even private organizations that call their events the World Championship. So even just answering the question, who is the World Championship of mountain running, it's difficult because there are so many, serious circuits, events where there should be just one recognized World Championship that is organized by the official federation. And while there is, not everyone agrees on that, and it's still not advertised enough, I think. So this is a problem because we are all losing, and I think trail running is missing out on a lot of also marketing opportunities, because I think there would be sponsors and companies interested in investing in trail running. But right now, it's just happened for companies that are inside of the sport. For example, companies that make shoes and apparel and gear. But not as it happens in cycling, for example, that there is a company that makes I don't know, cars or an energy company that invests and puts real money in the sport, which is what would help it grow and really, develop to a new level. So there are a lot of things, a lot of contrasts, a lot of problems that I see that I like to discuss. But step by step, slowly, things are changing, and one of the signs that I see is that more young people, young athletes that are running well are being supported by companies. So this is a good sign. Hopefully this year, the first World Mountain and Trail Running Championship will take place, where trail running will meet mountain running. So it's going to be a great event, I think, I hope.
You mean about Thailand, yeah?
Yeah, Thailand. It's been canceled for 2 years, but hopefully this year is going to take place, which probably some athletes, myself included, have lost a bit of hope and trust in these events, in the institutions that are organizing it. But I feel it's still important for the sport to have one world championship where all the best runners go and compete. From what I see right now in the trail running scene, the easiest thing would be to organize a world championship in Chamonix, during the week of UTMB, because that is basically the world championship for the ultra distance. So I feel it would be quite easy to add, a shorter race, a mountain running style race, and that would make the event more complete, maybe. But I don't think the institutions and UTMB and also the Ironman organization that is now collaborating with UTMB are interested in that. So, as always, the athletes are losing when these things happen. But I'm still confident in the evolution of the sport.
And can you tell us a bit more about how does it look in Italy? Because I'm not, so much into how does it look in Poland about mountain running, but as my colleagues say that, the federation, the Polish federation does not help them so much, and, they're rather doing everything by themselves, and even the federation does not want to put them into the championship. So it's hard to imagine that they will help them this year or another. And how does it look in Italy? Does your federation help you and help other guys?
Yeah, here in Italy we're really lucky because historically there has always been a really good tradition in mountain running. So there is a national team that is well supported, and the federation is interested in sending teams to World Championship and European Championship. They also organize training camps, so we're lucky that we get to do usually 2 training camps every year, maybe one in the winter and one in the summer or before a big event like a World Championship that is fully supported by the federation. But I understand this is a problem that a lot of athletes that I talk to have. Bart, a lot of athletes from different countries, their federation don't support their travels, their participation to World Championship and institutional events. And this is a pity because athletes are missing out on opportunities, and these events don't grow as they should. So I guess Italy is in a privileged position because of what has historically happened here. Yeah, there should be definitely more support from federation for their trail and mountain runners. I think one thing that will help is the fact that the World Mountain and Trail Running Championship are going to be organized by World Athletics itself. So they're going to be very similar to, for example, the World Cross Country Championship, where most federations want to send their athletes and support the teams. So hopefully we will go in that direction where more and more countries will participate and their teams will be fully supported, because this is the only way I see to make the sport really global. Otherwise, for example, in private circuits, they're open to everyone, but actually the participation is at least at the professional level, just for professional runners who are lucky to have a contract with a company, and the other runners cannot really compete. So maybe runners from Africa or South America or Asia, where the sport is not as developed as in Europe or United States, don't get these opportunities. So there is good and bad of both institutional events and private circuits. Again, as I say, the Golden Trail Series is a great project. I support it a lot. I plan to compete again in 2022 if my body cooperates. But there are also some problems that I think shouldn't be hidden and should be addressed by athletes, first of all, because we should be aware of what we're doing, where we're going, where we're competing. And also by federations, which often I think they're not doing enough to support the sport as they should.
And what do you think, like Kenyatas, as Spanish people say it, on people from Kenya? Kenya runners can run fast in the mountains, because so far, it's hard for them to compete with the best mountain runners. So what do you think? Can you predict if they can run quite fast, for example, or Sierra or UTMB?
Of course, distance runners from East Africa, Kenya, Ethiopia, they're the best in middle distance running and marathon. So I wouldn't see why they couldn't be the best in similar events in trail running, at least up to the marathon distance. Then I think ultra running, 100Ks, 100 miles are quite different events, where the qualities, the abilities of classic runners are not as important as in shorter races. So I'm not sure that, for example, Kenyans would be really strong in a race like UTMB, for example, because there are a lot of other factors that come into place, which is, heat management. You run through the night. You have to, there is nutrition, there's aid stations, a lot of things that it's not just running, it's also a lot of hiking, using poles, a lot of things that East African runners are not used to it. But for example, on shorter races, like let's take Sierra, which is the most famous example, there's actually been a few African runners who have done really well there. I think it's just a matter of those races being attractive enough for them, because the prize money is good, but it's still not huge, like in marathon running. So, for example, while for a Kenyan athlete to win a big marathon can really change his life, to win a Sierra it's still not like that. So there is not enough interest for them to fully focus on mountain or trail running to compete, because after all, for them it's like a normal job. So they do it for of course for the passion, but also a lot for the money. And companies are not very willing to invest on them like they invest on European and American runners. And this is one of the problems that I highlighted before also. So it's a mix of different reasons why East African runners haven't been so dominant in mountain and trail running, at least in shorter distances. But I think as the sport grows, they will start having more interest in those races. And when they will, if they really focus on, specific training for mountain races, it'll be hard to compete with them. I think we will still be able to compete as white European athletes, but there is going to be a higher level and more density, which is only going to be good for the sport, I think.
Or the situation will be similar as in triathlon, where it's very hard to find a guy from Africa, in top 10, even top 100 of the best triathlons. And also I need to ask you something, because in Poland, especially before pandemic, very popular was a situation where people from Kenya, for example, they could race, they could start probably 3 races in the weekend. So, for example, on Saturday morning they run 10k, in the evening they run 5k, and for example on another day they run half marathon. And can you see the same situation in Italy, or it didn't happen anytime?
The rules of our federation actually don't allow runners to compete in more than one race in 24 hours. So it's possible to do a race on Saturday and another race on Sunday, but not 2 races in a day. But yeah, we've had some Kenyans, some African runners coming over to Italy for marathon, half marathons, 10k, typically road races where there is a bit of prize money to compete. And I actually don't see it as a problem, because after all, if they manage to win races, it's just because we are slower. So this should be an incentive to train harder and better and beat them. But I can see a little bit of a problem if they race too much, which first of all, it's not healthy. And I think it's a little bit of an incentive to doping, because in order to compete so much, you have to recover. Some athletes are willing to dope themselves, which is not good at all. Controls are not. Yeah, there are controls, but probably not enough to catch everyone. So I think there should be a little bit of a balance that I'm not sure where it is, but someone who takes care of this problem is definitely good.
So Francesco, coming to the end, can you just tell us how does your typical week look like? I mean, about training. Do you train twice a day or just once? How many times do you go to gym? I also got some questions because one guy who listened to the podcast says that you look like guy who have never been to the gym. So can you tell us how do you train, and do you agree that you have never been to gym?
Yeah, I probably look like someone who has never been to the gym, but I have actually been. I've actually built a little gym in my basement. It's very simple, but I feel it's enough for what I do. So there is some weights, there is little things very simple that I do for like squats, lunges, push-up, crunches, those classic exercises that I don't think it's rocket science. You just have to do the basic and just make sure you do the right things and recover well from one session to the other. So I will try to describe a little bit what my typical training will look like when I'm healthy, because right now I'm injured, still fighting with few physical problems, the elbow and stress fracture at my groin. So I'm mostly cross training. But when I'm healthy, my training looks a lot like that of a marathon runner, because I find a lot of benefit in training a lot on the flat. I joke all the time that I'm the professional trail runners who does the least amount of elevation every year. Sometimes I'm probably below 100,000 meters of elevation per year, which is quite low for the average trail runner. I don't measure the elevation, the weekly elevation. I tend to measure the mileage, which is usually about 150, 160 kilometers per week. Yeah, most times I train twice a day. I usually do 10 or 11 proper training sessions per week, not including stretching and some mobility and yoga sometimes. And there is usually a couple of more intense quality sessions per week. And usually I have at least 2 days of recovery of easy running in between those sessions, because they tend to be quite hard. They can be either in the mountains or on flat, typically on the roads, on the track, or I like also to run on gravel a lot for tempo runs, for fartleks, for maybe intervals. I like to go to the track. I would say 2 quality sessions, 1 long run, classic long run, depending on what I'm training for. Can be, again, on the flat, maybe 90 minutes to 2 hours. If it's in the mountains, it can be even longer, up to 3 or 4 hours. Usually quite good intensity. So when I do my long runs, it's not just staying on the trails and running easy, but there is always some part at close to race intensity, close to race pace, which I think is important to train for the uphills and the downhills, the technical terrains, to be able to handle that at race pace, which is obviously different than when you run easy. And the rest is basically a mix of easy running, recovery runs, and a little cross training with a bike, as I said, especially after the hardest sessions. Typically, for example, the day after a long run, I use the bike. And some core and strength sessions, which are definitely more important during the winter time, where I try to build a base that will help me be stronger in the mountains in the summer. But when I'm doing specific sessions for mountain running, so let's say uphill workouts, uphill fartleks, intervals, and stuff like that, and when I do a lot of elevation, when I do long runs and stuff, I don't need much strength training and gym training, because I feel that makes me heavier. So I just use some simple exercises and core training as a maintenance, to keep the habit to do some exercises, but not really intense and without weights, which I do a little bit in the winter. So depending on what I'm training for and on the time of the year, my training is a little bit different, but this is basically the structure. Then if anyone wants to reach out and ask more specific questions, of course, I'm happy to answer. My training is all up on Strava, so you can check it out and ask me anything.
Yeah, and I really recommend your films on YouTube about mobility, because I watch it and I introduce it before training, because it's really nice. So I will put it on the description of this episode, because I find it very, very valuable. So thanks for that.
Yeah, those are some videos that I did for my collaboration with Vert. So there is a few, for example, mobility exercises, the things that I do for core and strength training. There are some running drills, there is foam rolling, just a bit of everything that is complementary to the running part of training.
Yeah, so thanks for that. I mean that we have talked about so many stuff. I think that we could talk another hour, but I think that maybe we'll meet some another time. Thank you very much for time. Thank you very much for this conversation. I hope we'll meet maybe for some Golden Trail World Series competition, because I want to start it maybe not this year. I will go to National Series, but maybe in year or in 2, or maybe we'll see each other on Tenerife, because I heard that you had plans to go there, but unfortunately your injury didn't allow you to do that. So thank you very much. My today's guest was Francesco Puppi.
Thank you, guys. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for having me.